Tonight on Ship Chasing, we have Fantasy Life's Chris Allen joining us to talk about weather. Does wind matter? Can you bake it into your best ball drafting processes? We're going to find out tonight. And then naturally, we are going to hop in a best ball mania draft. Let's do it.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your sight.
Jamar. Alpha play chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally at this point. You're right.
Chris Allen, welcome to the show. We got Karain back from vacation. We got Gretch rocking his Chasing Karain shirt, and none other than Fantasy Life's Chris Allen joining us. How you doing tonight, Chris?
I'm doing well, man. Like we were talking before we got recording, just been enjoying the summer, trying to touch grass as often as I possibly can, running around with these kids. So in between getting some articles out, doing some shows, I was actually doing a show. I did a show yesterday with Marcus Grant. Got a show like queued up with Ian Hartitz tomorrow. So in between like content, day job, kids, I mean, it's just been a hectic summer for sure. But no, I'm excited to like join you guys. I've been fans of like all you guys for years. So being on the show and guesting with you guys, man, it's a huge thing for me. So no, I appreciate it.
Awesome. And you mentioned being busy, drafting season. You know, Underdog is now officially trying to tear us apart by offering both a slow puppy contest and a fast puppy contest. I mean, which side of this great divide do you find yourself on?
Fast for me. It has been like nothing but fast. I definitely drinking that Ian Hartitz Kool-Aid saying, you know, like the slow is like un-American. But I've preferred that because I don't know if it's all anecdotal, right? It's knowing that, you know, there's always a decent chance that you're going to get one or two picks that are going to be completely off ADP when you do it that way. Folks like queuing stuff up and then they wind up missing the clock and all that jazz. But for the most part, it's just easier for me to cram all of my stuff into like 45 minutes and like build a team and figure out what strategy I got and go from there.
Yeah. I mean,
how are you going to get 150 puppies done, Chris? I don't see it happening for me. I think I'm team slow on this puppy thing.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
I did not know about these puppies because I don't check the Underdog lobby a ton. I fly out tomorrow to the last of my like vacation month that I've had since my kids got out of school, out of state. I'm going to I'm going to a bachelor party. I'm going to be doing fast puppies drunk. I'm going to be doing slow. I'm going to get in so many fucking slow puppies. This is going to You guys just made my fucking day.
Gretch is going to be like going out for a nightcap and Gretch will be like, yeah, a little tired. Might just retire for the evening. And then he's like under his covers until 6 a.m.
Tabling 5 puppies.
Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you guys and the chat, because I do know a lot of people are completists with these contests. Like they want to max enter it. Obviously, max entering the slow is much more doable. If you want to do it, you can max enter it. If you had 150 bullets, do you think some people might do like 75? I'm thinking of like the OCD completist type, because doing all 300.
I didn't do any poodles for this reason. I was like, I can't max it. I don't have time. I'm not gonna do any poodles.
Okay, I didn't do any poodles either. Chris, how many fast puppies do you think you're going to get to?
If I could realistically, I could probably do 20.
Okay, 20. Yeah, 20 seems like a normal, well-adjusted amount. I have a feeling there's some people in the chat here who might not be as well-adjusted.
Chris, I might do 20 tomorrow. What are you talking about, man?
Gretch, do you think you're going to max the slows when you're across state lines?
That's an interesting question. Because I got a lot of work to do, and when I came back from the last trip, I didn't get a lot done right after that because I was just like excited to be doing all these drafts at once, even though I didn't even have that many. But Pat and I we were talking about the three of us in our chat, and Pat and I were kind of similar on that regard. We're like, you're like Pete saying you're smart about it. You set some time throughout your day to check in and make all your picks. Pat and I were like, I mean, we're just kind of checking all of our drafts.
Willy-nilly.
Like, yeah, a little bit. Or like, yeah, like I'm opening the app too frequently when I'm doing these drafts every like couple hours. Oh yeah, I'll fire off. I was doing a lot of willy-nilly picks, but like treating these slows like fast, but draft them like a $10 dynasty league, as we famously said.
Yeah.
But I can't get in that many drafts at once and then also get work done. that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found that I almost had to do it willy-nilly when I had 150 slows. Because in addition to doing 150 slows, I did 120 of them or so at once, where I literally just like in the afternoon one day just fired in 120. So they were all like at the same point in the draft as well. The most of them anyway. So I almost had to just kind of like let them trickle in, because there were a couple times when I was like, I just want to go to bed, man.
Did you find yourself drafting a lot of the same teams if you ripped them off like all at the same time? Because I feel like if
I don't even know. You think I reviewed these teams and saw
I did that.
I don't know.
I did that when I did all my first group in a bunch. I noticed that for sure, Chris.
Yeah, I just feel like if you're just staring at the same names, looking at like have the same rankings up and like all that jazz, you just find yourself just running into that same type of squad over.
I definitely do that in fast drafts when I'm multi-tabling, especially if I'm doing two. I'll just be like, well, I might as well grab Richardson on this team too.
Right.
I know I'm backdoor stacking the Colts. It's easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely do that in fast drafts.
Yeah, that makes
one of the reasons I don't like multi-tabling that much. I think I lose more EV multi-tabling than even if I just do the double monitor, because I just like can't concentrate on building the correlated teams that I like to build. It's not that I'm like structurally I think I'm probably fine, but I'm just like I kind of forget who I took and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
I just pulled up my exposures from those 35 drafts that I did. That's all I've done so far. And my top three guys were all over 40%, which is not something I was trying to do, but that's like to your point, Chris. I think I got CLV on all of them. Godwin, Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Warren. These were all early. I entered these June 2nd, June 3rd. I think all those guys have risen since then. I know Godwin has, and I know Thornton has. He is?
Yeah.
All right, good. Right before I get in some drafts. More Godwin for me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Thornton, I think, would have plummeted again if the Patriots had signed Hopkins. Whether that's right or wrong can be up for debate, but I definitely think he would have dropped. It'll be interesting to see now the betting markets have shifted to the Titans, and saw Davis Maddock got sniped by Dave Kluge on the same tweet, throwing up all the other wide receivers who finished their career with the Titans. Anyways, be better, Davis. Do you guys think that like Treylon Burks, like if that does happen, how do you guys think that's going to impact stuff from an ADP standpoint?
They all fall. Like almost all that has to affect Burks. Any love for Chiggy, I would think that have to kill him too. So outside of
people love Chig though.
Yeah.
One little low key thing I think that would mean is that it's a much more likely Ryan Tannehill season, which is I think actually probably better for Treylon Burks, right? Like if they go get DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think Hopkins is signing to play with Will Levis, like just like a rebuilding season.
That would be insane for Hopkins to sign up for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a thing about Malik Willis. RotoWorld blurbed Malik Willis might not make the team, but then in that blurb, they talked about how Willis was probably ahead of Levis.
I saw that.
Wow.
So, like, that to me is the headline. If Willis is ahead of, I mean, they know, one, they don't like Willis. We know that. And two, Willis is not very good. So if Levis is behind him, that's really good for Tannehill.
Can you just imagine, though, the situation if they wind up having to start Willis at some point? DeAndre Hopkins just on the sideline, just pissed off. Vrabel just like chain smoking, like in between halves and all that. Like he would just have
it's the Jay Cutler meme, but real.
Yeah. Like,
it would be. I would be fascinated to like sit down with DeAndre Hopkins and be like, all right, what did the Bills offer you? What did the Chiefs offer you? What did the Titans? Let's look at that difference. And then let's like play out two scenarios deep into the playing into January, live for a Super Bowl, or like an extra $1 million in the bank. Like, I don't know. It's like,
are you trying to become a player consultant?
Well, and circling back to when before he was released, when he was being interviewed at a lot of the events, what was it, like the combine and stuff? And they were I can't remember who interviewed him, but they were like, tell us, give us some indication. What do you think? And he couldn't talk about the team because it's tampering and all this, but it's like, would you like to play for the Bills? And he's kind of just like smirking, like, yes, I would, like very clearly, like saying which teams he prefers. And then he hasn't signed with any of those teams. And the teams that he's liking are the ones that they weren't even probably discussed on this video that I'm referencing. But it seemed like he really wanted to go play for a contender. Like he had video. And so I to your point, Pete, I'm really curious what those teams have been able to offer, the Bills, the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I mean, is it even close? It must be not even close because he seemed to really want to actually play for a winning team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see it play out. We got people in the chat are fired up for weather talk tonight. The weather stuff is all over the map this year. I was talking about it with Brian on Lulz, and people were pushing back on it. And then all of a sudden, then today, Pat and I are drafting, Cleveland, New York Jet stacks, and everyone's like, "Aren't you worried about the weather?" So it seems like everyone is all over the map with how they are thinking about weather as it pertains to fantasy this year. Chris, why don't you
much like the weather itself?
Yes,
we just don't know. We just don't know. Chris, why don't you set the stage for us? Because I know you've been working on weather-related stuff for fantasy for a long time. I know you have always been a voice of reason on DFS mornings when there's 17-mile-per-hour wind gusts and everyone's ready to full fade a game here. So talk to us. How did you get started in the weather business? And then we can get to what you've been working on lately.
Oh, really? Just because I'm an engineer by day and I do data analysis on a fairly regular basis. Now I'm like more program management, but I was in a lab for most of my time until the last few years. So being able to play with data, but also applying it to fantasy football. And then on top of that, when I first got into the game, it was trying to find like, what could my niche area be? Right. Because, JJ got the late round thing. Reeves got the Konami thing. I was talking with Harmon at the time. This is around like 20.
Pat got the win $2 million thing. I mean, that's a pretty good niche to have.
I mean, that's also awesome. I mean, that's Pat's like niche thing too. But it's like, I wanted to find out what could I do that would be different than what everybody else is currently doing. I mean, versus draft strategy and all that. And weather just seemed to be one of those things that a lot of folks have random thoughts about it. We have our own biases when it comes to wind, rain, snow, and all that because of all the extreme games that we've watched over however many years, decades of watching ball. So trying to challenge those, maybe do like a little bit of myth busting and say, yeah, I mean, short passing isn't really that big of a deal. We should really look at how quarterbacks actually play the game of football versus just saying short passes is going to be bad for fantasy. All that stuff to say that's what kind of put me into this spot. And I found it's also like honestly kind of fascinating in my mind.
Yeah, and there's now I feel like if you would have made this your niche, 5 years ago, everyone would be like, what, dude? And like now there is legitimately a market. There always has been for like DFS Sundays. I think people really care about that stuff. And you've seen guys like, Kevin Roth over at Roto Grinders where people check in on his weather reports. But now with best ball and the way that these prizes are structured, that now you release a contest like weekly winners where you're looking at optimizing for specific pockets, specific weeks. And like this weather stuff has a legit impact on Vegas totals. You can go look at how totals drop throughout the year as weather gets colder. And you've done a lot of cool stuff about wind, but like, where are you at just in general? Does wind matter? Does weather matter? Is this something people should be focusing on when they are drafting?
Not when they're drafting. It's more on a week-to-week basis. So something like this weekly winners thing, I think would be really tuned for something like that, where it's just a microcosm of not just the players, but also the matchups, the locations, because all of that stuff does matter when you're factoring in, especially the wind itself, but also snow for a number of stadiums that have like heated pipes under the field. So snow impact might not be as much. So I've studied like stadium design. I'm probably on like a fucking FBI list or something like that. Looking into like, which stadium is how tall and like what, how many people it can fit and all of that. So it's got, you can go down.
If the FBI looked into you, they would not be convinced by the truth.
Yeah. They'd be like, no, it's for
like,
fantasy football. No, I swear. Like, I'm not trying to do anything like terrible or anything like that. Yeah. They'd be like, no, why the hell would you do like, no, you're going to jail, buddy. Like, just get in the back of the.
Can you imagine trying? I mean, it's hard enough to explain that to people who like know what you do in your personal life. Like, trying to explain that to the. Oh man,
that would be an abject disaster. But like actually, like back to the DFS part of things. So this, I haven't told this story like on air before, but. So I was working behind the scenes at ETR like last season. I was helping out with their research team. So each week, whenever some weather stuff would happen, I would either like in the Slack, I would message, like Leone, Lev, and like all of them be like, hey, I think it's going to be this. I don't think it's just going to be not going to be a big of a deal. All of that. Remember that I think it's week 12, week 13, Chicago's playing against the Jets. It was projected to be an absolute downpour before the game. And from a DFS standpoint, the big debate for that week. It was going to be, should you roster Treylon Burks or Garrett Wilson? Because from a price standpoint, they were relatively the same. Target share was going to be relatively the same. But if you weigh those two situations and just try and break ties in favor of weather, Treylon Burks was the call. And of course, I'm sitting there talking in the Slack. I'm telling Leone, I'm telling Lev, I was like, yeah, man, guys, like just looking at the forecast, it's going to be an absolute downpour. You guys remember that San Francisco game for the San Francisco Indianapolis game from a season ago, even like when San Francisco played Washington back in 2020, week 7, week 9, all that stuff. And we saw the totals dropping and everything. So most of them made the switch. And of course, in the first quarter, Garrett Wilson catches like an 8-yard pass turns into a 50-yard touchdown. They got like 2 touchdowns on us in the first half. I'm sweating the whole time. I'm waiting for Silver to call me up. I'm waiting for Silver to call me up like, yo, Chris, what happened, man? What happened, bro? That's
a meteorologist, bro.
Yeah, I thought you knew what you were talking about. That's what I was waiting for. I was like, I'm sitting there. It's like that. Good. It's like the Denny Carter, like, screaming the process, like me. Like that's what I was doing, just like the whole.
As Silva stuffed you in a locker, the process.
Yeah, right.
Man, that is. I mean, that's tout life, right?
It is rough.
And then you get to explain probabilities to everyone.
Yeah,
multiple people remembering this. People here wants you to define what a monsoon are. He says people in the fantasy space describing any heavy rain as a monsoon has been driving me crazy for years. Do we have an official fantasy meteorology definition of monsoon?
That's a hell of a question right there, because I do want to set that straight, because people do say that, like they say like torrential downpour and monsoon and all of that stuff, when I would say 90% of the time I think I've recorded 3 games total where it actually has turned into a situation where pass rate over expectation, total plays run, all the stuff for fantasy has actually been affected. And that Jets game was affected. It just didn't happen until the second half. But I use Weather Underground is a site that I use because they actually track precipitation rate in inches per hour. And typically light to normal rain is between 0.01 and 0.03 inches per hour. That's about, like, you don't even see it if you're watching it on the normal TV broadcast. Once you get past that into 0.03 to 0.06 inches per hour, that's the stuff you can start to see. You'd see it like on the players' helmets. You can kind of see it just from the normal view, like the camera angle, like on the field. That's what you can typically see. But normally, that doesn't affect the game. Once you get into 0.1, so 0.1 inches per hour, that's the Chicago versus San Francisco game from week 1 of last year. That's what they played in week 1, right?
Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Yep. The Trey Lance
that we do call a monsoon. He played in a monsoon.
Right. That one was legitimately a monsoon. The San Francisco Washington game from 2020, like I said, week 7, week 9, somewhere in there. Legitimately, like a month type game. Yeah. And also the San Francisco versus the San Francisco teams seem to happen to them a lot, versus Indianapolis from 2021. I think that was week 7, sometime in October. Like those games where your visibility to the field is affected, and you can see teams actually calling more run plays, pass rate over expectation is affected. That's a monsoon. That's what we should actually care about for fantasy purposes. The rest of the stuff, when people start calling for it's a torrential downpour and all that, unless they're actually looking at the forecast and looking at what the precipitation rate is going to be for that matchup, which is something that I do because I have scripts that pull all that stuff on a daily basis, especially leading up to game day. That's like once I see folks like tweeting about that, it's like, yeah, that's probably not happening, because it's just a rare event, honestly.
Yeah. What about, so one of the things I think is super cool about the wind research you've been doing, and I'll pull it up here, you've been looking specifically at QBs and how they perform, in various like wind scenarios, which ones are unaffected, which ones are impacted by the wind. I was cracking up seeing Zach Wilson being most impacted by the wind. That just seems
that one really felt well. Also, you can see Patrick Mahomes on that very same table, but I think that table, honestly, and breaking it down by each particular quarterback, that's what we really should be doing for this type of analysis. Because if you look at that table, you see Zach Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Heineke, what the hell are those guys, Drew Lock, like why do they belong on the same list? The numbers bear it out. that if you compare them to their baseline pass rate over expectation, so baseline being if there was no wind, if they happen to be playing in a dome, but then compare that to the times when they were playing in a dome, these guys pass rate over expectation drop. Total plays are dropping. Their completion percentage over expected, for the most part, is falling, except for, of course, as you see on the table, not Mahomes. But when you see a number of these quarterbacks significantly affected by weather, you can pull out profiles of a lot of them. They're mostly pocket passers. They're dudes that they're not running. They have no scrambling or rushing component to their game. So of course they're going to be affected by fantasy if they're running fewer plays, if their accuracy is dropping and their pass rate is dropping. So all that analysis that when it comes to the weather, a lot of it comes out in the wash of saying that if we were to just analyze the quarterback and say that, well, we figured Kirk Cousins isn't going to be much of a rusher anyway. So if they're not passing much, then of course, he's probably going to have a bad game. But for a guy like Patrick Mahomes, the reason for their pass rate over expectation dropping in the 3 or 4 games that I charted for him playing in games that were 20 miles an hour or more, they were all blowouts. 3 out of the 4 were blowouts. Like there was like 48-3 against Oakland 2 years ago, 38-9 against Oakland the year beforehand. That's why. It wasn't because of the wind. It's the fact they're beating the shit out of the Chiefs. So a lot of it does, like, we walk into these situations thinking that it's going to be the weather. It's going to be the weather. It's always going to be, the reason why we wind up losing is because the wind is going to be so high. When a lot of it just becomes matchup analysis, things that we should have been doing in the first place. So if we apply more of that before we say, oh yeah, there's a 20-mile-per-hour wind and start freaking out, then I think a lot of our, I guess, consternation, anxiety about weather, a lot of that would just kind of go away.
It's a great point because there's a lot of stuff that winds up being like we find one thing to pin stuff on, right? And I think one of the bigger points that you're making is there's so many things that can explain any of the results that we see, but often it's like we limit it down to one, specific trade or a couple of specific trades. I just wanted, you threw it in there, but that's so hilarious that Patrick Mahomes in windy games somehow has a 5 percentage point higher completion percentage of over expected. I mean, he's just
it doesn't
ridiculous.
matter. Yeah,
This guy's too good.
Yeah, he's just too good. And but also you can see his average fantasy points. He's still acting like a QB1. Like it's still happening for him. And the same thing was for a lot of the quarterbacks that appeared unaffected. Like Josh Allen was on the table just right above that. Still like rocking like a 24, 25 fantasy points per game average. That's even with the
what
win.
happened to Andy Dalton here?
He was
1.6.
Dude, it was terrible.
What are you doing, Andy? What are you doing?
It was a tough scene. Tough scene for Andy.
But another thing, like what you're talking about a lot is making me think of, we talk about like psychological biases and the ways that, we can exploit those things, the ways that the market overplays certain things. We see it in a ton of ways. I mean, one of the guys that I'm starting to see a ton of hype around is Kyle Pitts. And I'm sure everyone watching this show knows we were talking about him a lot last year. We're excited about him again this year. He's starting to generate a little buzz. The whole Kyle Pitts, Drake London thing, people keep talking about, well, I mean, why would London go ahead of Pitts? They kind of have the same Atlanta pass volume issues. Pitts, if he hits, though, gives you tight end production. Also, he was out targeting London when they're on the field together. It makes no sense. The only reason he's going behind him is because Pitts was universally called the biggest bust in fantasy football last year. It's just like a group think. People don't want to get burned by Kyle Pitts again. We do this in so many ways. I don't know. I got off on a Kyle Pitts tangent. I don't know where I was going with it.
but to your point.
I was gonna say the monsoon last year being week 1. We do this with the early season stuff. Everyone's paying attention week 1, and then did it feel like all season last year everyone was kind of giving you that like, well, I mean, but it really was bad in week 1 when the Bears and the Niners. It's like that one thing sticks in their head, and you're pointing out as a very rare event, but last year was even rarer that it happened in week 1, and then it kind of defined what people expected every week. Oh, this is going to be like Chicago and San Francisco from week 1 because that just sticks in the mind.
Yeah.
I want to hit.
Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No, I was going to hit a couple other questions from the chat. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, to your point, Ben, about the bias thing. Pete, can you pull the article up real quick and like scroll up? It's the very first chart. It's the older one. Because I've seen this one quoted. I mean, it's from Brian Burke, who's like the goat of like data analytics. So like this is the chart that comes from Brian Burke's original study from 2012, showing adjusted yards per attempt by wind speed. And so I've seen this chart quoted, tweeted, like pasted into tweet threads like over and over and over again. But like you look at this chart, you see that line, you see how quickly it starts to fall off as you get from 5 to 9 miles per hour, like on down. You see that slope. And so that bias almost immediately hits you that, oh, if I get past 20 miles an hour, I mean, they're just doing dump off passes. That's it. You see that, and that's what you think. But now if you scroll down a little bit more, because this is just averages, a little bit more past that, because I recreated the same thing and get the same. This is the problem that you run into. It's a sampling issue. You've only got, once you get past 20 miles an hour, looking at it, there are 24 games that have been played in the last 5 years that have had wind speeds greater than 20 miles an hour. 24 games. 24 games. That's 48 quarterbacks. And actually, of those 48 quarterbacks, I want to say 7 or 8 of them were duplicates. So really, actually even more than that, because I think the total list of unique quarterbacks comes down to about 28 quarterbacks. So 28 quarterbacks have played in at least one game in the last 5 years.
Because like whether they're good or not isn't going to be a big factor here.
Yeah, but that's where you get the Patrick Mahomes down there on a few of them. You get the Andy Dalton really like shitty game. You get the Kirk Cousins, a few of those games. So it's like if your sampling becomes like so little, that's probably part of the problem there.
24 games works out to exactly a week and a half of an NFL season.
Yeah.
So and we know that a week and a half of an NFL season is very predictive of the rest of the year.
Yeah,
exactly. But we already have by seeing and retweeting that same chart, which there's nothing wrong with the chart. Like, as you can see, Burke had it in 2012. I just recreated it for data from the last 5 years. The behavior is correct if you do it by looking at averages. But then when you look at the sampling size, like for that average, once you get above 20 miles an hour, it's like we cannot and we should not just pull conclusions just based off of that trend. That's why we should be looking at pass rate over expectation, CPOE, total plays run. I mean, all the other fantasy relevant metrics to say that this is when from a miles per hour standpoint, that fantasy stuff is actually getting impacted. And besides, shorter passes isn't a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, like his ADOT has dropped like 2 yards since like 2019. Joe Burrow had to like their explosive pass rate that stopped after the 2021 season, and they found another way to be more successful in the intermediate parts of the field. So short passes isn't a bad thing. I mean, we know all of these players can work in yards after the catch. So it's like, why do we assume that because quarterbacks are throwing shorter passes that they're just going to suck for fantasy? That's not true.
Well, one of the things with the sampling issue is that I feel like actually this is something I might be taking from you through Leone, because I remember talking to we talk about our chat that me, Pat, and Pete and Leone have, that I feel like it came up in that, and he was probably quoting you on it. But basically, it's not that the average goes down. Talk about the average, but averages can play tricks on us. It's not that we should expect a reduction of 5 or 10%. It's more like 80% of the time there's no reduction, 20% of the time is catastrophic. And it's like, do you want right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. And trying to figure out which scenario falls into the 80% versus the 20%, that's 50% of the battle. That's half the battle. I mean, that's the greatest like challenge for us right now. And that's why whenever somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, what do you think about this game?" I go all the way back to, well, who are the quarterbacks? How do they normally play? And then now let's put on that layer of where are they playing at, how much, like how high or how hard the wind's going to be blowing, or how much precipitation there's going to be. I mean, I'll just start with the quarterbacks and then layer on the weather analysis from there, because if you don't start from how would they normally play in just a game, like how would they play in a dome? If you can't answer that question, you're not starting from there before you layer in the weather, then all you're going to be doing is like almost essentially double counting your negative biases towards bad weather.
But if you hear that one of the quarterbacks is Andy Dalton,
don't do that. Yeah. get him off your roster.
Casey was asking in here about like Deshaun's numbers being so wild. Anecdotally, we all remember like some of these Cleveland win games. I'm going to try to push this back. I know you said a lot of this win stuff is a little bit more specific for weekly stuff in DFS, but for best ball drafting and looking at the schedule, obviously, as we get into the winter, games get colder, totals drop. Can you suss out anything relative to Best Ball Mania? Any edges there? You're going to hear a lot about El Nino this year. Do you have thoughts on it being on El Nino as it pertains? Like, how can we make this slightly actionable for our drafting?
Yeah, the highlight of my last couple of weeks has been sitting at this desk at 10 o'clock at night looking up what the hell an El Nino is and trying to figure out what, because of that damn Davis Maddock tweet, and figure out like what does that even, what does that mean?
Davis Maddock tweet has started a lot of things. What
is that? Like, what is that? Like, why does it matter? And honestly, like after looking at it, so if I'm reading this correctly, or like the way that I read it, like from the NOAA's website, an El Nino is supposed to be something that affects like tides and wind pressures and all that, but it's more towards the equator. So while that might impact like the coastal regions, it'd be more towards the south. So if there are games in like Florida, let's say maybe Texas, like somewhere like that's closer to the equator, that makes some sense. But overall, I wouldn't think like out of the New England Buffalo game that's supposed to happen in week 17. I'm not thinking that one should be affected, because at least from what I'm reading, El Nino is more towards the south.
And I had heard that it potentially could mean a more mild winter in terms of the temperatures. Is that?
Yeah, that's that's okay. But it's the
so maybe El Nino year is a good thing. Maybe we want El Nino.
I think it's like the La Nina, which typically comes afterwards. That's when you get like the worst stuff.
Okay, and when is that?
La Nina. Now it sounds like we're talking about a fleet of boats.
In a couple years.
In a couple years. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think it was like season or something like that afterwards. Yeah.
Let me frame a question this way, because I think like there's sort of this logical thing, when people are thinking through what games to target. You look at the Vikings and the Packers in a dome. You get, it's kind of easy to dream on that game being fun, and you go, oh, it's in a dome. Then you go Jets Browns. Like, I get why people are a little bit nervous about stacking up Jets Browns, especially because like from a matchup perspective, it's like, Aaron Rodgers always plays slow. The Browns like to run the ball, so it could be bad. But it's also happening on December 31st, so it's tough to get too in the weeds. If I told you right now, the Jets and the Browns are playing in 20 degrees Fahrenheit with a 13-mile-an-hour wind, would that affect anything for you?
No, not at all. 20 degrees. So from a temperature perspective, from the studies that I've done in the past, I need to update it for Fantasy Life. But the stuff that I was doing beforehand, you don't see a drop off in pass rate over expectation, total plays run, any of those fantasy metrics until you get into the single digits. So think about that Minnesota-Seattle game that was played in like single digits, that playoff game from however many years ago, and what Blair Walsh like shanked the kick.
Missed that kick from like 25 yards.
Yep. Yeah. So that one. So those
was a 10-9 final or something like that.
Yeah, it was something wild. Like those types of games, but you don't see a drop off in fantasy related metrics until you get into the single digits. And like I mentioned beforehand, 13 miles per hour, not even something to really factor in. The only place that I've seen anything less than 15 miles per hour play a factor in any part of football has been at Gillette Stadium, because the north end of Gillette Stadium has that like angled like open section like towards the end on the north side, and kicks have been messed up because you can get gusts that will come in like back through that section, almost like
why Mac Jones is ADP so low,
and almost like funnels like air pressure in like right there, and it's messed with kicks before on games that you typically wouldn't expect to have like much of an issue. But 13 miles an hour, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, nah, ain't no problems there.
Okay, so I mean, if you're like fading any of these games because of the weather, like you're betting on, it sounds like a pretty kind of uncommonly bad weather situation, which you have no real reason to expect other than sometimes the weather's bad. I mean, I guess like would it make sense to you to prioritize even the dome games to just a slight tick up, because at least there we know there's no chance of severe weather?
I don't see a problem with that. But from at least a couple of the games that you had mentioned, so like Jets Browns. So while you mentioned, and this goes back to the recommendation I was having earlier about analyzing the teams and what they can potentially do, it's like, do we expect them to have like the same like passer over expectation with the weapons that they added this year? Could they tick up a bit more and be a bit more pass friendly? And the same thing with the Jets. I mean, given Vegas totals and all that, their average weekly implied totals are supposed to be up this year, so we should expect a bit more. It might be running slower because it's Aaron Rodgers, to your point, absolutely. But could we have two teams interacting with each other that are at the let's say at best average in pass rate over expectation versus being both bottom 10 like they were last year? So could you get a situation where this is a team that's the two teams that are, passing back and forth throughout the game? It's entirely possible. So where even if the wind does become, or let's say just the weather in general, because it's going to be a December game, even if the weather does become an issue, you might be looking at two teams that are going to be more pass friendly, not pass first or pass heavy, just more pass friendly compared to what they were in 2022.
Right. And if you get there to week 17, you've probably hit on that to some extent. Right. Pat, to your question, the way that I would analyze it is again, we obviously always do it as a market related thing. And this is everything I'm hearing from Chris is telling me that the market is over concerned about this, right? And I've made the 80-20 point where 80% of the time it's the same, it says no drop off, 20% of the time it's catastrophic. It's probably more like 95-5 or even more, because like what you're saying, Chris, is those catastrophic events are very limited. Yeah. So the question is let's say it's 95-5, the 5% chance of ruin where you get all the way to the championship, you have that roster, and the weather is what crushes that roster in week 17. Probably not even 5%, but contingent on all those scenarios, we'll say it's 5%. Are we getting a 5% discount on those stacks because people are worried about that? Like, what is the market discounting it more than the actual weather catastrophe concern? I would argue the market probably is overplaying it. That those are easier stacks to make because people are too worried about the weather, based on everything I'm hearing from Chris, just like literally from this conversation. That's how I'm interpreting it.
And honestly, if you put in the DFS layer, how many folks, even if they are stacking that game, the more common approach would probably be what Nick Chubb and Njoku with like right,
because they're saying it's going to be a weather game.
It's going to say it's going to be a weather game. So at most, they're probably going to have Chubb. They might have Njoku, and if they had Garrett Wilson earlier, then they probably drafted him. But not everybody's going to want to try and do an Elijah Moore.
Yeah, it makes me want to go do a huge stack. Yeah,
it does. That's what it makes me want to do too. Just stack up those games, because I mean, if you show up with a game that's less popular, that's called leverage.
Yeah, right.
All right, I did register us for a Best Ball Mania. We are on the clock at 1-4. Chris Allen, what do you do when Jefferson, Chase, and Tyreek Hill are off the board?
I've been going CMC at this point, like with all those guys like off the board. Well, I do prefer. I mean, I like Cooper Kupp, but I've typically gone CMC here.
Let's get the Chris Allen experience here with CMC.
Let's introduce him to the Avalanche. I don't actually see that. I think we get away with it.
This isn't. I don't see any friends in this draft. Is anyone?
I've been going Kupp there, but I don't think I've calibrated for the more and more we're getting confirmation on Brock Purdy, the more and more CMC. I mean, at 4 is maybe a discount. Like he can catch a lot of balls.
Yeah.
I'm taking him over Hill now.
CMC over Hill?
But not Kupp?
Yeah, but not Kupp.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. Dude, I did not believe. So I had Eagles on Best Ball After Dark. If you guys are YouTube members on my channel or Ship Chasing, you guys saw that. And Eagles told me, he's like, Nick Chubb is going to be a first-round pick by the end of Best Ball Mania season. He's going to go ahead of Bijan. And I was like, no way, man. It's like, it's not going to happen. Nick Chubb is screaming up boards. Like,
he's with an 8.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I was like, there's no way. And now I see it all the time.
Can someone tell me why? He was already overpriced.
I have no idea why.
I definitely missed out. Like he was like going very cheap for where Nick Chubb usually goes, and I didn't hammer it because I was like, yeah, he seems
last year he was like,
I'll mix him in.
He was like a 3rd round pick last year. You could get him at like 310 last year.
Yeah.
Is that
And
right?
you could get him at like the 2-3 turn, like earlier parts of this year. That's where I was taking him.
That's where I was
21,
taking
23, somewhere in there. But now I've seen him routinely go like that 9. So if you pick 9, 10, it's gone like wide receiver and then Nick Chubb on the wrap. That's typically what I've seen.
I think Jared nailed it though.
Very
Chubb
good.
snow game 40-point week 17.
Dude, it honestly might be partly people are like, don't like that week 17 game, the passing game, but Nick Chubb. Except then they're not taking Breece Hall either, so then it kind of falls apart.
Right. Or do you mean Dalvin Cook with all this Dalvin Cook to the Jets talk?
Oh God. Don't do that.
I'm so torn on that one. I want cheaper Breece Hall, but I also want to protect my existing bags.
I'm drafting through. I wrote up this article how I'm going to take less Breece Hall a little bit, which is true. I did pass on him a few times that I normally wouldn't have, but then I was on the clock at the 3:01 in a 5-5 earlier, and I was just like, I'm fucking taking Breece Hall. I took Jefferson Olave Breece. I mean, that's fun. That's a fun.
Why would they get Dalvin Cook? Like, it just doesn't. I don't like. Until that happens, I'm not buying it.
The only thing I can think of is that they just want to really try and push as many chips in as possible, even though in my mind that you should just go ahead and like load up on the offensive line. Just make sure Aaron Rodgers is protected. You don't need to really stock up on running backs.
Way better.
Yeah.
This is what's crazy too. Kevin says, do we underestimate this room? Because it did seem like you got a Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, but then you still have T. Higgins, Waddle, Olave all come off the board here.
That Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry team is going to be in for it.
That's high T drafting, baby, right there.
So, Chris, do you steer into the Avalanche or do you capitulate with Devonta Smith?
I capitulate with Devonta Smith. That's what I've done. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to get, I mean, have you guys been seeing this stuff with Barkley with the Monday deadline as far as accepting his franchise tender or not? Yeah. And otherwise he's his only option is to hold out. He has no other option or to play on the $10 million.
But wait, what is it? He starts to incur fines. Is that?
It's just sorry. The deadline on Monday is if they can agree to a longer contract, and the Giants are like, no, we're just giving you the tag, and so he's still trying to
after
play
that point, they won't be able to negotiate a longer term deal this year.
Exactly. The only option for him after Monday will be to play under the $10 million tag
or hold out. Wow.
Or hold out. Yeah. So the only reason I bring that up is I do think we're going to start to see some cheaper Barkley, at least over these few days, until we get some clarity on that. So he falls all the way here to the 2-3 turn. So I hadn't been drafting a lot of Barkley, but I do think I'll start to pick some up here in this 2-3 range, where we've all been drafting.
I've yet to draft him in Best Ball Mania. I've mixed him into some higher stake stuff just to.
I thought we'd get him.
What do you guys like to do here? Chris, I'm curious which direction you go.
I would still. I've like really started steering into getting more like Chargers wide receiver. I've taken Keenan like here before.
Wow. Okay.
I think he belongs here. I love that. I mean, it's aggressive, but I think he belongs here from a pure value standpoint.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Over those other guys, I've taken him over the guys in front of him right now. I've taken him over most of those guys.
Debo is maybe the only one I would make a case for, but those other three guys, I think Keenan should go ahead of.
Yeah, DK, no. Calvin, no.
Is that an Avalanche take, or you? Because I think one of the key questions right now in drafts is how you handle the 2-3 turn, and kind of not even the turn, that sort of larger back, the front half of the board when you're coming back on the backside of the second round, all the way to kind of the mid to late third. There are running backs there who I think we're kind of not used to being priced like that. How are you handling that?
Yeah, are you tempted by Rhamondre Jacobs at that spot?
Jacobs, yes. Rhamondre, no. For some reason, I haven't been able to really suss out why. Maybe that's a leak in my game, but I've tended more towards Jacobs than Rhamondre.
We all have guys like that. I know exactly what you're describing.
I actually feel the same way about Rhamondre right now.
I've been pretty in on him, so that's interesting.
Well, Cook is one of the the Patriots are one of the teams that's getting floated for Cook. I don't know how seriously to take it, but then they also keep talking about Montgomery. It's like kind of this I don't want to hear anything about a guy not being the workhorse. I don't want to hear a single thing. I'm hearing like multiple things. Like I know Jacobs has the holdout stuff as well, but I think that gets resolved. I feel
Rhamondre's the gap between him from a talent perspective. He was really good at all the advanced rushing metrics last year. The gap between him and especially Ty Montgomery, but I mean Pierre Strong might be a thing, but basically everyone else on that depth chart. I think I agree with you, and I Belichick's tendencies concern me, but from a we maybe don't play into running back talent enough perspective. Like if Rhamondre is as much better as the rest of those guys as he has appeared to be so far in his career, Belichick will lean into that. He's done it before. He leaned into like Lawrence Maroney at one point. When he had Corey Dillon, he had Corey Dillon be the guy for a year. I mean, it's not like a very frequent thing, but he has had guys or maybe Corey Dillon was even before Belichick. I don't know.
Maybe that was. Yeah.
He's been one of my guys. I really like Rhamondre. I think he's very good, but I actually don't think he's been like a superstar, especially in the receiving stuff. I think he's very capable as a receiver, but he was running back 27 in ESPN's receiver ratings last season. I'll pull up his yards.
Yeah, the rushing stuff. The rushing stuff.
What he is to me is he's just super solid across the board. Like he can do everything for you. It's actually sort of similar to Josh Jacobs. Like he can do everything for you. He's got size. You don't ever have to take him off the field. If you're looking for that type of running back, like he's awesome. But if a guy would rather have, coach would rather have a bit more of a committee and play to guys' strengths. He had 1.24 yards per route run last year. That's like right around what Fournette had last year. It's not a bad number, but it's not like special. I don't think he's like as protected because he's not a superstar.
Yeah, the lack of efficiency in the receiving game. I think that's a good point. I agree with you there. I think I don't know exactly the advanced rushing stats. I don't have it in front of me, but I think I've heard that he was among the top in forced missed tackles per attempt, all that stuff. I'm trying to pull it up, but
and even I don't know about explosive run rate, but even still, like forced missed tackles, I thought like he in yards after contact per attempt, I thought he was
right. I think he's like elite at those. What are you seeing that has him as like average, Pat?
No, I don't mean that he's average. I just mean that he's not a star in terms of he's not. I mean, you could make the case he is a star because he's good at everything, and that's really hard to find. But he didn't do so he had 62 rush yards over expected, 133 attempts as a rookie, 141 on 210 attempts last year. We make this pick and all.
Yeah, we're on the clock here. Debo slid all the way to 4.6.
Wow.
Watson comes off the board. London, Mike Dubb, if we want to build out Chargers, DeAndre, Ayuk, Mixon.
Is Fields or is Herbert still here? I assume, but
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming Burrow and Fields is on the board. Yeah.
What do you guys like?
I'd double up Chargers or go London.
Chris, say it.
London. So I want to run this by, like Pete, I know that you've talked in the Fantasy Life Discord about this, but for the early round quarterbacks, while it becomes more of a typical path to do the Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen stacks and all of that, but have you guys started looking at building out your stacks with some of the later round options? So if you were to do an Allen, Kincaid, Shakir, that sort of thing, where it's that there's going to be a number of targets available to most of the pass catchers on a weekly basis just from the pass rate over expectation associated with the Bills. But instead of using a stack that most folks are going to be building, why not look at some of the other pass catchers that might be less rostered on some of these teams? So instead of a Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Herbert, you do Keenan, Herbert, Everett, Keenan, Herbert, I don't know, throw in Josh Palmer if you want to, but it's just looking at those lesser pieces of the offense, the lesser popular parts of the offense in order to stack your early round quarterbacks.
So interesting spot to think through here. If you're thinking about detours, if we do take a quarterback, we're probably going to be in a pretty nice spot for a tight end in the 6th round as well. Just something to consider.
I think it's Deontay or Godwin for me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, either one of those two is fine.
I'd go Deontay over Godwin, I think. But I would also go Herbert. But
I was thinking that.
Situation.
So the only thing that's interesting about Herbert is often Keenan is on this side of the board and falls into a more like ADP correlated range for the Keenan drafter at the 5-6 turn. We obviously took him here early, and the Mike Williams drafters behind us. Small chance for a slide.
That's
Maybe
what I was
happen.
thinking. Two things, that we didn't take Mike Williams in 4, and then because we didn't double, that we might want to try to play for him to fall in the 6th.
Yeah.
Deontay's really risen up, huh?
Yeah, he has
like,
a lot.
You used to be able to
I
get
would have
him
still taken
all the
Godwin.
6th.
Well,
Yeah.
How many times were people going to quote that 0 touchdown
regression?
stat before?
Yeah.
The regression stat before.
So I pulled up the Rhamondre Stevenson thing, Pat. Yards after contact per attempt, 3rd in the NFL among all running backs, behind only Tony Pollard and Nick Chubb. Missed tackle percentage generated, 2nd among all running backs with at least 100 rushing attempts, behind only Josh Jacobs last year. He was like, those are the two, as far as I understand, the two, I really don't care about running backs, but I'm like quoting people I don't even know I'm quoting. As far as I understand, the two most predictive rushing skill statistics, and he was really good at both of them, like elite last year, both of them.
I like the NFL Next Gen stuff, which he was very good in. Looking at the guys with 200 plus attempts, he had he was behind Chubb, Pollard, Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Deontay Foreman, Tyler Algier, and then Rhamondre.
Is that the success rate one though?
No, that's rush yards over expected per attempt.
Yeah, RYOE.
Yeah, which is I think a pretty good metric. It's kind of an explosive metric.
Yeah, per attempt. I don't know if that was per attempt or total, but yeah.
I should have known that the team that started Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, and Najee Harris would be totally down to take an unstacked Justin Herbert.
Oh,
God. I love it, bro.
For the audio listeners, our team through 5 rounds: Christian McCaffrey, anchor, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, Drake London, and Deontay Johnson. I mean, the one thing is we do still have some quarterback outs. We mentioned the Purdy stuff with CMC. If anyone wants to join me on the Ritter train with London, Deontay Johnson with Pickett. So we're not boxed out of stacks here.
No, and if we want to go the Pickett route, I mean, we can still grab Lockett, JSN on the run back if we need to.
Yeah.
It was a really long time ago, but Bill Belichick's 2004 Patriots gave Corey Dillon 345 carries at one point. I mean, there's some, like, I just think, look, like, I know that's a really long time ago, but we act like Belichick won't ride a guy. And I think I think he rode Rhamondre to a degree last year when Damian was banged up, right?
Did.
And I think when he has guys that are the clear best runner, he's like, fuck this, I'm going to ride this guy. Like, he's the best player. He's the best football player. You know, like Belichick's that kind of, like, you know, hard-nosed guy. He's like, dude, I'm leaving him on the field. Like, he's the best player. Like, I'm not gonna rotate just for rotation's sake. So, I mean, I think that's the bet with Rhamondre. It's like, you're like, Belichick's just going to be like, this is our best runner. We're riding him.
To be clear, I have 8.7% Rhamondre. I'm not out on Rhamondre at all. It's just that, you know, with Breece, I'm having to, like, have a little come to Jesus moment with Breece and go, you know, they might sign Cook. You should save some bullets, save some ammo. Maybe you can get cheap Breece later if they do sign Dalvin. But Dalvin's been floated to the Patriots too. Like, that's something I think we should bake in a little bit of that risk. And what does it say that he's being floated there? With Breece, it says we're not sure if this ACL thing's going to recover as quickly as we want, and we're going for it this year. With the Patriots, they're not going for it. Why do they want to bring in Dalvin? That's like a little bit of a red flag. It's not a huge red flag, but it's enough for me to be like, I think Jacobs signing that tag and they're going to ride him all season. Like, why don't I just take Jacobs?
Yeah, that's a good point. Jacobs is very draftable too.
This is the spot I basically envisioned we'd be in. Kittle slides all the way to 66. JSN comes off the board at 67. This isn't your normal ship chasing room. Those guys would be fixtures of the 5th round. Pitts does fall to us. I have a feeling if you guys want to do Pitts, we're going to probably still like the wide receiver that comes back to us.
Pitts.
Yeah,
at
I like
7-2.
Yeah,
we got London. We're going straight Desmond Ritter double stack. Let's go.
Do we want?
I'm in on Ritter, by the way. I've come around on Ritter.
Let's do it.
Howell, but you guys got me on Ritter. I'm in.
All right.
You know who got me was Sean. Sean wrote that.
Yeah.
Good ass article.
leave it to
And
Sean.
he didn't even. Here's how good Sean is. He didn't even write the Ritter article when he wrote the preamble to what I knew was going to be the Ritter article, and I was like, "Fucking fine." I know you're going to sell me later. I can already tell I'm going to be sold later, so I might as well just get on board now and retreat to my anti-Howell base and see if I can fight him up there. I'm losing this Ritter battle.
Well, you're losing the Howell battle, Pat. All we do is draft Howell together on stream. And
man,
we're gonna
5 straight receivers. Shit.
Wait till Jahan Dotson makes it back to us here, and then it sets up the Sam Howell build.
Ah!
Oh God,
Pickens,
Pickens. We'll take Pickens.
Double?
At
Let's go
ADP.
Pickens.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. Yeah.
Wow, we are.
all right.
This is a Pickett
Ooh.
Ritter
Woo.
special. Let's go.
We're
We
just
do need
banking
a
on
third
scrambles at
quarterback
this
there,
point.
though, guys. I will be the voice of reason here and say this is not a 2 quarterback build.
This is not a 2 quarterback build.
Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely,
You're right.
not.
An unstacked Sam Howell kind of rounds out.
Oh, no.
Oh God.
Mac Jones, bring back.
Now, I will,
Oh, dude.
like, all jokes aside, Purdy fits nice with those two.
Yeah, he fits.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Purdy
I was
would
just
be
thinking
perfect,
that
actually.
in hindsight, if we would have, I mean, Debo almost made it back in the fourth.
Debo was
but,
crazy.
Yeah, that'd have been
fall.
sick. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, someone in the chat said they've been seeing Debo fall in their rooms. I'm trying to see,
I
like,
haven't really seen Debo fall. I've seen Drake
Mhm.
London fall a lot. I got him in the 5th round, the late 5th round of a draft. He also goes really late on DraftKings, and I wonder if like the platforms are kind of like starting to cross pollinate a little more or something.
No.
interesting.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but there was a huge gap between where London goes. Like London's more of like a mid 5th rounder on DraftKings, and he's like a early 4th rounder on Underdog. And it seems like the Underdog ADP is meeting at the DraftKings ADP a little bit.
Yeah, I do know DraftKings has been running a bunch of their promotions, giving out tickets and stuff. Although that accounts for like Underdog drafters going over there. I don't know what's pulling DraftKings drafters over.
But
To Underdog
it is
now.
interesting when you're on DraftKings. You're like, oh, I kind of like this. Like it probably tricks you a little bit. Like you don't want to. If you get London in the 5th a bunch on DraftKings, you don't want to come over and take London in the early 4th on Underdog, right? You're like, all right, I'm getting mid 5th London. I'll take, McLaurin or whatever. Although McLaurin goes really late on DraftKings too for some reason.
I don't get that either. I'm not sure why McLaurin falls on DraftKings.
I don't know. I mean, the receivers in general go a little later on DraftKings, funnily enough. But not all of them. There's like certain guys that are a little bit more in line with their Underdog ADPs.
Yeah.
Chris, what is kind of like your overall portfolio of Best Ball Mania teams, or even just kind of on Underdog? Like structurally, have there been things that you've been trying to accomplish or stuff you find yourself doing a lot?
From a structure standpoint, I've typically gone the 2-5-8-3 route, just looking at mid and late tight ends, because I've been favoring more of like the Pat Fryermuth all the way back to like Luke Musgrave, like all of those guys. And because of the games that I've typically been stacking, like I'm really digging the Green Bay, Minnesota game. So if I can work in any of the like Green Bay guys, like even drafted Jordan Love like a couple of times. Those have been like definitely like 3 quarterback teams, but liking where like you can get like Luke Musgrave and like some of those other guys, Jaden Reed, been grabbing him like a little bit like towards the back end of drafts. But yeah, from a structure standpoint, it's typically been like 2-5-8-3. Had some 3 quarterback teams like mixing in like Kirk, Tua, like that, typically in that quarterback realm. But again, like picking up the same types of tight ends. But yeah, like also looking at a lot of the mid-round RB values. So from Rashad White to back to like Gibson that you can get like in the 10-ish round, like somewhere in there. Really liking like some of those guys, especially if you do these wide receiver heavy drafts that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. We are about to pick at 8-9 our team here through 7 rounds. Christian McCaffrey, anchor, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Kyle Pitts. Nice build here. Man, the tight end's really falling in these rooms. Dallas Goedert's still on the board here at
I've
pick
been
90.
if he gets to us. I just think we spent a 6th rounder on Pitts, so like technically we didn't even go elite tight end. So like virtually there's nothing wrong with going 6 and 8.
And we have a bet on the Eagles with Javonte.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a no-brainer. We take him if he gets.
Could
up.
also kind of Goddard does go there. I mean, he goes bully with Kelsey.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
All right. This does feel like a running back pick here. Do you guys have a favorite?
I would be fine with Javonte. I know Sean's getting pretty bullish on him. The reports are getting fairly bullish.
Bring back on Keenan.
Yep.
Ooh, are you good with that?
That's a good call. I like it.
Yeah. I think the Javonte stuff's interesting, and I know I think Jacob Sanderson had a good tweet about it too, and I was writing about it for the newsletter the other day, where it was like I had written about Javonte and the team, and Peyton had like bullish comments about him being ready for training camp. That was in mid-May, and his ADP had fallen a round and a half since then, and literally nothing has happened. Like after they signed P. Ryan, didn't draft a running back, didn't do anything. They say like on track, no setbacks, and his ADP has been falling. And it's kind of weird why that is, but I definitely like the price in this range.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he could rise to a uncomfortable level. And I don't have a ton of him because I've been sort of like, he might just keep falling. But I don't think he's going to keep falling now. And I also do not want to take him as like a 6th rounder or something. Like that's where it starts to get really. I just am worried about, what he looks like this season, how much upside he really has coming off that multi-ligament tear. So,
yeah,
I think the bottom is in on Javonte. It was around the 10th round. Congratulations if you got him. I didn't really get much, but
I would almost rather like once Javonte's ADP starts to spike, my assumption is that Samaje's ADP drops a little bit.
Yep.
Then I want to scoop that.
Yep. I think that's a really good call. And I think you can still take both of them. I think you can play that backfield basically any way you want. Charbonnet goes off the board.
I would probably go Sutton here based on that.
Sutton too.
Having the Denver LAC stuff. I think he's pretty undervalued. I've made the case that I think he's inside the wide receiver window. I think a lot of people are thinking he's outside and a boring player. But in doing the projections again, I didn't feel like – digging into it again with the projections, not to cut everyone off. Is everyone cool with something?
Yeah.
You cool with it,
No, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. I came around to like, I think there's a case for him. Like his targets per run, his weighted targets per run, very solid last year. Like the efficiency was bad, but we know Russ was bad. And like if the offense does take a step forward, if you're playing Denver, it was his lowest yards per target of his career. But still solid range in terms of volume drawing. And that was actually kind of a little bullish because we know that a lot of teams were playing the cover 2 deep shell, and a lot of these deep threats did see their targets per out run decline. Like Mike Williams had a down year in that regard. Gabe Davis had a down year in that regard. George Pickens, efficient first year, but didn't really have a strong targets per out run with this high ADOT. It was hard for all quarterbacks to push the ball downfield. Chris, you mentioned earlier some of these quarterbacks' ADOTs have fallen. The league-wide ADOT fell quite a bit last year. But Sutton still earned some pretty solid volume for a guy with a 13 plus ADOT. He just wasn't efficient, and part of that's like, okay, well, Russ was like chucking it nine yards out of bounds. Like if Sean Payton can develop the offense a little bit, I still think Sutton's like last year was supposed to be okay. He's a second year removed from the ACL. 2021 wasn't great. He obviously didn't get anything in 2020 because he tore the ACL. 2019, you go all the way back, was a year 2. He was good. So, okay, 2020, he gets hurt. 2021, first year back, kind of write that off. Last year was supposed to be he's his second year back. He can be good. And he wasn't. But I'm arguing that I don't think there's anything underlying it other than some efficiency issues that were, sort of systemic to the whole Denver offense. There's not really anything in there that's like, okay, well, he's definitely bad now. Like,
Let me throw this out there.
Go ahead.
So 81 wide receivers were tracked last year in ESPN's open score. Where do you think Jerry Jeudy finished out of the 81, and where do you think Cortland Sutton finished?
I would say Jeudy finished higher. Yeah, I know. It's a trick question, but I would definitely say Jeudy finished higher.
Quietly ahead of him.
Like 75 and 76.
Judy was 11th and Sutton was 12th.
Damn.
Wow.
Okay.
And Russell Wilson still sucked.
Yep.
That's even that's terrible for Russ.
Sutton's catch score was 25, which is extremely low. Only Romeo Doubs and Deebo Samuel finished lower than that.
Whew.
That to me feels like I'll fade that part, especially if they're talking about him running more slants and maybe getting used with like a little bit of a lower ADOT. Like we know that drops and stuff like that. We don't want to be focused on the catch part so much of wide receiver. We want to be focused on the can you get open part. Yeah, and it looks like he can still get open. I think the narrative of he didn't make it back from the ACL is actually just like completely wrong. Like that's not backed up by the data, I don't think.
Yeah. Like, that's the point I was trying to make. Cobra Kai says, was Sutton good, or did he just get that massive target share that 1 year? The point I was trying to make is that 1 year was his year 2 breakout, tore his ACL year 3, and then it's basically been year 4, year 5 since that. It's weird that we're 5 years in, we don't really know, but my point is we don't know, and we're getting a price here where it's still an upside profile. That's the argument. Is he inside the wide receiver window? Does he have an upside profile? I think he still does. Like I still think he could be a guy who could have, be a 5th round pick next year, basically. He can rise several rounds at ADP. There's other receivers in this range that can't. Tyler Boyd can't rise, that much in ADP.
No. Yeah. I mean, dude, the market insisted that he go at the end of the 3rd round last year. It was crazy. If you were like, I actually prefer Judy, they were like, you're a fucking idiot. Like it wasn't, they weren't cool about it, like they really weren't. So like, I guess I'm now kind of, okay, wait, now we like can't take Sutton at all? Like what's going on? It's very odd to me. Is that overconfidence? It's very strange.
We're on the clock here. I would put in a vote for
I think one of the running backs. I think Robinson.
I was going to say Robinson or A-Chain, but I don't know if you guys have anything else. Do you guys care about Robinson CMC week 17?
No,
not really.
All right, what do you got, Chris? Give me a name.
A-Chain.
Let's do it. Yeah, I think of those guys. It was between Robinson and A-Chain for me. There, I think the CMC pick gives us
easily Harris for me there.
Yeah,
why is it not Harris?
It would be Harris or Robinson for me, and I'm thinking
Why?
about it more partly because we got Javonte, so we want the early season stuff a little bit more, and partly I think Harris has a lot of upside in that backfield.
Yeah,
maybe consolidate touches.
My thing is just market based. I mean, the reports with him competing with Latavius Murray for that role. I think we're getting Damian Harris. And I'm not even saying that like he's not going to beat him out. I'm just saying I think we're going to get cheaper Damian Harris.
I missed that on my vacations, so that's why I said why isn't it Damian Harris? That's fair. That's a good answer to that question.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it seems like insane that Damian Harris couldn't beat out Latavius Murray, but Latavius has been hanging around and been a thorn in a lot. I mean, he was pretty good a few games for the Broncos down the stretch last year.
I think what one thing Harris has going for him is he's been a very solid pass blocker, and actually, like if you look at yards per hour and stuff, actually totally solid receiver. And Cook was an atrocious pass blocker last year. So I think it's a bit of a wide range of outcomes where he either gets beaten out by Latavius Murray, but I think on the upside, he kind of does a Devin Singletary to that backfield.
We got 20 seconds. This is a pretty choose your own adventure flat spot here. If you want some early season production, you could do Jamal Williams.
Or McKinnon.
Yeah,
how likely is Russ to make it back?
Russ is gone.
Russ Wilson went in the 8th round.
Another running back?
Yeah, I'd go Jamal. Yeah.
So, to your point, Pat, I think CMC does give us a decent amount of cover, but with Javonte and A-Chain, you could have guys that are just zeros for the first.
I like Jamal a lot with this build. And I don't really take Jamal a ton, but he makes a lot of sense.
When I said another running back at the last second, I said it too late. I was wondering if Warren and Kendrick Miller were there, which I think I would have just with guys.
Ooh, that would have been a good call. Yeah.
We could have gone down and maybe we should have.
There he went. Yep, there he went.
I meant to point out to you guys, I didn't know if you guys had noticed that Russell Wilson went at pick 81.
I saw that.
Did not notice
I almost spit my drink out.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair,
I thought we were setting up a Russ thing this whole time.
Oh no, I knew that was long gone.
I mean, I still like the Charger with the running back and the wide receiver coming back. That's still fun, but
yeah. What is your guys' read on ADP movement relative to the Kamara stuff? It seems like people are more bullish on him now. Do you guys think we're getting cheaper Jamal and cheaper Kendre and more expensive Alvin? Is that how this is going to play out?
Probably, yeah.
I unfortunately think there's no argument for Jamal if you're going to get more bullish on Kamara, because Kendre is the one that's like the talent-based play. What is the argument in Jamal? Like, he wasn't even that efficient last year. He just scored a bunch of touchdowns.
he wasn't very good last year. Yeah, the success rate stuff that I looked at was actually quite poor for him.
On this build, the argument for him is Kamara gets 6 games, Kendre's not ready, and we get like swag daddy.
Yeah, we
20
get
touches
early
for the
season
first
stuff.
Third. Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
He serves
Until
a purpose on
Javonte's
this
back.
build.
Yeah, until Javonte's like back, like handling the majority of the workload. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bridge running back.
Mm-hmm.
But Kendre, I think, can be good enough that, like, because Kamara has not been a very good runner. I think the argument for Kamara, if you're playing him, is that he's still pretty decent as a receiver last year. And, like, his earlier career stuff when he wasn't carrying 200 times, that's, like, probably a better touch mix for him, 150 carries and more receiving. But then it's like, okay, who's the other big runner? And, I mean, Kendre he's that profile, right, Pat? Like, he's got size. He can be, like, I think from a talent-based perspective, he can take rushing work from Kamara is what I'm saying. Jamal,
that's why
might
you would
just
draft
get it by
him.
default.
That's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a big back. He's kind of like, he kind of runs like a little bit of a smaller back, but I like that. I kind of like, you know what smaller backs do? They try to avoid people.
Yeah.
So I like when big backs run.
I guess if Kendre is not good, Jamal can just be the veteran who gets work, right? And then if Kamara comes back and isn't really good for whatever reason, maybe Jamal. I guess I want more than like a 6-game limit for a running back in that range. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're about to pick at the end of the 12th round here. Still no quarterbacks. We got 4 running backs: CMC, Javonte, Devon A-Chain, Jamal Williams. Wide receivers: Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Kyle Pitts at tight end. We should still definitely think through if we are doing a 3 QB build, we should think through. I guess Purdy gives us stuff. I was going to mention, just throw a name out here, of Rondale Moore as a bring back with Devonta, and maybe even being done at wide receiver, since we already have kind of like a lot of our other stacks set up.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we don't have a quarterback, I kind of would like to keep that wide receiver bullet. And, if we can, like, we could do a Stafford right here and just like try to grab a falling Van or get a 2-2 late, something like that.
Taking Stafford with all these other stacks here with it.
We could do a
sliding Rondale Moore.
10
I would want to grab Rondale Moore. Go ahead.
The one thing I'll say, Pat, is like, if there's a really obvious wide receiver, I don't think it still precludes us from getting to 8. Like, we're covered pretty well positionally, I feel like.
Yeah, we could do 3, 5, 8, 2.
The stack option now is the third stack option is the Patriots. We have 2 tight end options to be our tight end too. We only have 1 tight end. You can play Gesicki or Hunter Henry with Mac Jones. It's the easiest fucking thing to do.
Well, the other thing too is Kyler now fits with this build as well.
Which I like that, because I mean, you got me on Ritter a little bit, but a Pickett Ritter quarterback room, I'm like, I really could.
No, we're all in agreement that it's 3. I think
I'm saying what I want in the quarterback profile is upside.
Gotcha.
Not starts. Upside.
Okay.
So you're saying that would push you to Kyler over Purdy in that configuration?
No, it'd be
maybe Purdy, not over Purdy, but over I forget,
like Carr or Mac Jones or whatever.
I like Roshan as our bring back for the Atlanta.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good play here.
A running back pick here.
Roshan?
Love it.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting the Purdy thing.
I've tended more towards Donta Foreman. That's just after looking at some stuff like his efficiency stats, like after CMC left. But I think Roshan's fine.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to those guys are so cheap and Foreman falls. Like, that's definitely a backfield I don't mind taking 2 of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think too, like, because the way I've been thinking about it, and tell me if it's wrong, is that kind of what's exciting about Roshan is if he gets the pass catching work there, and then, Foreman, we know who Foreman is too. Like where I don't like if something happened to Herbert or whatever, the new staff just doesn't like him as much. Like a Roshan Foreman 1-2 punch, like I can see how that would work out for both of them.
Yeah.
I want to go back to our quarterback thing. I disagree with Pat on the upside thing. We have 2 doubles, and I think Pickett and Ritter both run enough that they clearly have weekly quarterback upside. Like, what is upside at quarterback? Like, you can spike touchdowns, 30 rushing yards, and have a third. Like, Mitch Trubisky used to have Millie Maker winning upside on a weekly basis. He's not like that much more of a runner than what we're saying Ritter or Pickett can be. Like, that's what quarterback is in fantasy, right? Like if you go to
pretty
3
underpowered. If I go into a DFS tournament with Pickett or Ritter, I feel pretty underpowered at the position. So I'm just saying, I think to me, I want
in any given week in DFS, I agree with that. I'm saying that when you have 3 quarterbacks in best ball and you get to automatically put the top scorer into your lineup, I don't think you have to have like a Kyler rushing profile to have upside. Is the point I'm making.
So
I
you're saying
think he has a lot more upside that's why you would draft Kyler, because there's a chance he might not even play this year. So he is like the biggest upside guy on the board without question at this point. Otherwise, you wouldn't take him at all.
Right. Yeah. That's sort of, but my argument is like, it's maybe not even worth the risk for the cases that you've already made about starts risks. I think he's kind of fool's gold because I don't think he's going to run as much when he comes back.
I don't draft a lot of Kyler. I don't draft like Kyler. Yeah. We're so late, and I'm like Stafford to me has upside because they might just throw a bunch. But I think the thing with Ritter that's tough is like, we know they don't want to throw. They probably throw more.
We're playing both London and Pitts.
Yeah.
So we're playing them to throw.
We're playing them to throw, but we're playing to be the Seahawks. Right? We're not playing. They're still not going to throw a lot,
Gino was a high win rate player last year. He had upside.
Yeah, they were top 10 pass rate over expectation?
He had a lot of upside from a get me there. But I don't think even if you got there, you weren't super psyched with having Gino as your upside play in the final week. I think you want.
And just to put my week 17 hat on, I am going to side on like the Kyler side. We didn't get Dotson. We didn't build out anything with that Niners Commanders game. We passed on Robinson. I do like the idea of building out the Rondell with the Javonte. Bring back like that is the more, levering up that specific team. Like if we are looking for a tiebreaker there, honestly, this room will probably decide it for us too, just based on what comes back.
My main case was I didn't think we had to have Kyler. I guess that's where I would disagree.
I don't think we have to have him either. I was kind of more framing it against like a guy like Carr who I floated, but I think Purdy has upside just because the offense is so good and scores so many points. So I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't.
And then Ritter and Pickett, I think. For the same reason, I think you're right that they probably don't. But once you double stack both of them, you're kind of saying they have to have that, right?
Yeah.
The same way Purdy does.
So how do we want to play this ADP wise? Losing Pickett is going to hurt far more than losing Kyler. All of these teams have 2 quarterbacks between us. How do you guys want to play it?
I'm fine going Pickett because Purdy is our alternate off Kyler.
Yeah.
Correct.
And like Stafford and Love being there for cover, like we're probably going to still get our boy, right? Unless they all have 2 quarterbacks.
They all have elite quarterbacks too. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, so they'd be taking a third, and they all have their second in the mid too.
Oh so then we should be fine.
We're going to get Pickett and Kyler, right? I mean, that's got to be.
Yep.
Because if any of them does take a QB, they're going to take probably a Stafford. I mean, I don't know.
It is the decision you have to make. Like Ritter should be there at 189 in almost most scenarios, although I'm sure I just fucking jinxed it. But Purdy's not coming back to 189 anymore. So it is a decision between Kyler and Purdy. What do you Chris? You mentioned you had been doing lots of the like late 3 tight end builds and like more 2 QB builds. My guess is you haven't been slumming it with us on the Kenny Pickett and the Howells quite as much.
No, actually I have, because if I wind up doing because I'll go wide receiver, quarterback early, in like the first 6 rounds with maybe like running back. And then it kind of leads me into getting some of those quarterbacks like towards the back end, because I just got sniped on I had DK and Lockett, or is it DK or Lockett or DK and JSN had Geno Smith queued up, and then he went like right beforehand. So I pivoted Freiermuth, Pickett, and all that. And actually, I like the upside of Pickett, just kind of looking into the scrambling rate from last season, what we can expect from Deontay Johnson, positive regression, blah, 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 blah. And I've just been not as much into their running game outside of Jalen Warren. So it all kind of intersects at Pickett just being an option for, if you do grab a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, one of those early round guys, and just pairing him with Pickett later.
The Stafford fall is nuts, but
that is wild.
I still think Kyler's our pick here, right, fellas?
That's what we set up.
Yeah,
I think that's we don't have any way of playing Stafford.
Yeah,
we don't have a single Ram or Giant yet.
No,
and we don't have the bullets at wide receiver really to do it.
Yeah. So we know we're going to take one more quarterback. That leaves us with two more picks. We know one of those is at least a second tight end. So then really the question is that other pick, 6th running back, 8th wide receiver, 3rd tight end.
Receivers seem pretty fine to me to stick to 7.
I think so.
Well, let's see. We can get the tight end in the 18th pretty easily.
Do you know what also would be nice? A tight end. That McBride with the Kyler build is pretty nice.
That's pretty nice.
That is solid. Yeah.
The only there's other, if we got sniped, there's plenty of other options in the 18th.
The other option, we'll see if he gets there. You could toss out Isaiah Likely right there, since we took A-Chain earlier.
Ooh, little kind of, and he more so as likely in a 3rd tight end build, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could do Likely with Pitts if you did just go 2. But yeah, I think I tend to like Likely a little bit more in 3 tight end.
That's what I was going to say. So when I do 2 tight end, I go for the boring vets that I think have good roles, like Knox, who's already gone. But again, I go back to the 2 Patriots ones. I think Gesicki and Hunter Henry are both still just ridiculously valued. They're not playing the same position.
Well, yeah, that's why I don't take Gesicki. I don't think he's playing very much. But I like Hunter Henry.
Looking at other correlations, so I think the Likely with A-Chain is good. We got the old standby, Cade Otton with Jamal Williams. If you want to sell yourself on that. Noah Fant with the Pittsburgh stuff is in play there as well.
Yeah.
If you don't think Gesicki's playing much, and again, they are kind of different positions, but then Hunter Henry is definitely mispriced in the 18th round.
Yeah, no, I take a fair amount.
He's a good player.
I took him, Cade Otton, and Durham Smythe as my only 3 tight ends in the draft. So I'm hoping to God I'm right that
I'm completely with you, Ben, but I just I tend to want to use correlation to break ties on this amorphous blob of tight ends late, even if
But tight end scoring so low, I think that's right, but I've sort of talked myself into tight end scoring is so low to be viable in fantasy. You don't need a game to shoot out. Hunter Henry just has to catch 4 balls and score a touchdown. And that's a very viable week. That's probably the 5th overall tight end score that week.
But can't McBride do that as well? And we made a huge bet on, not a huge bet, but a bet on.
No, he can. But I'm saying I don't think I need to use correlation if I don't think it's just a tie break. And I think Hunter Henry's at least a tier ahead of McBride. And so it's more of,
I will say, I mean, again, sorry, this is just thinking about how we play this pick. I really doubt one of these teams is going to take Ritter as a 3rd QB unstacked, especially with elites there. So I do think this can be a tight end pick if we want to make it. My vote's McBride, but if you want to sell me on something else.
With McBride, I mean, we're reaching pretty far, aren't we?
Yeah, let's just go Ritter. I would rather just reach on Ritter and not risk
You're
that.
reaching more on Ritter.
We're in this 16th round, right?
Yeah.
What's our luxury?
But guys, you're reaching more on Ritter than you are on McBride based on ADP.
But I'm saying we should take our luxury pick here.
Oh, running back or receiver.
Running back or receiver. This is our spot for
we were talking about a 3 tight end build.
Oh, I'm fine with 2 tight end.
I think we should take one of the guys we know we're for sure taking.
Take McBride.
Okay.
If we don't know who if there's not a luxury pick screen.
Well, I wanted to see who was available. That's all.
I'm sure the board's here.
Pete was taking McBride no matter what. That's what just happened.
That was the end of it.
Who's our luxury pick?
McBride was good.
You had tight end clicked. I don't know who the luxury pick is.
No, tell me.
I don't know who that's going to be.
Tell me in hindsight who is the luxury pick.
Pete found a way to only show McBride on the board. He's the only player. Who's the luxury pick? Who do you want?
Who do you want? Who do you want?
Dwayne McBride? Trey McBride?
I don't think he makes any sense on this
filibuster.
We don't even have any Vikings.
No other options. No other options.
There's only 2 McBrides. I mean,
hopefully this one ends up better than the Rager one.
Yeah. Kevin referenced that Pete's headphones cut out an auto Trey McBride.
I'm not taking the L until you tell me who you wanted to take over McBride.
No, I'm fine with taking McBride. I just wanted to see who else was available because to me,
we're about to have the same discussion here. Do you want the luxury pick over Ritter?
No, Ritter.
I want to take Ritter.
I would say Ritter.
We have Kyler. It has to be a 3 QB build. We're legit fucked if someone else takes Ritter.
Yeah, we have to take Ritter.
God
damn it. Please stop owning me. I'm done being owned on that, please.
It is nice to be able to speak relatively freely without all these piss boys in our room with us.
It is nice. It honestly is nice. We miss you, but I also don't miss you. Yeah, I was just when I had it sketched out in my head, I was thinking luxury Ritter tight end. So then when I was like,
put a name to fucking luxury. Who is this luxury?
I mean, he's highlighted
players. That's what I was saying. You just had quarterback and tight end when I said
clearly
that.
Trey McBride was the luxury pick. I mean, that's all that was available. That's
Actually, he was because I think we're going tight end at the end. So Trey McBride was the luxury.
You've highlighted the luxury pick right here with our correlation. It's Cordero Patterson.
Boom.
Someone was in my YouTube comments today hyping up Cordero Patterson. You're not alone on CPAT Island.
I love it. What other tight end? Do we have Hunter Henry still on the board? We must not.
I think he's still there. I don't remember seeing him on the.
Henry. Henry's definitely.
How is he going behind? I kind of like Jake Ferguson. Kind of like Luke Musgrave. How the fuck is Hunter Henry going behind both of them? Doesn't make any goddamn sense.
They're worried about. So at the end of Gillette Stadium, it's not like a fully enclosed stadium, and sometimes like the balls when they get thrown to Hunter Henry, the wind gusts and stuff. Jordan Love is still available at pick 202 in this room as well.
That is wild.
What is this, Pat?
I'm gonna make a point on like a second thing. But
are you about to like?
Are you drawing a pick? Like,
yeah.
Are we charting?
Yeah, because I literally went in the weeds and like looked at some of the plays where tight ends are charted as in the slot, and I think that there's just sort of a collective misunderstanding about what tight end slot snaps even mean.
Okay. All right, I'm excited for this. I'll toss out one more Galaxy Brain pick. This is one of those like. We specifically passed on Rhamondre Stevenson to take Keenan Allen. Pierre Strong is kind of a fun pick at the very end as well if we're not going 3 tight ends.
I like that.
I don't mind that.
But that would be, dare I say, a luxury pick.
Yeah. I really want to know what Pat's gonna do with this circled picture.
I need to see some like legit NFL Network charting capability.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm gonna get who's the dude? Is Orlovsky?
We gotta get the music in the background too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this on the way. I'm gonna like be driving in on my car. Like, you see this? Let me pull this up. Let me show you again.
I mean, Pat, is this because you guys had, if you guys missed it, the ADP Chasing Crew had Matt Harmon on Monday. I finished listening to that yesterday. Very good episode. Is that what inspired you, Pat? Are you going to get in the charting business?
No, I'm not charting. I'm just looking and seeing what other people are charting. I wanted to see what the charters are charting and how they chart. Because there's a couple things. Sometimes I get annoyed. I feel like inline tight ends get a bad rap. You know, they're acting like they're just there to block on passing downs when often they run routes just as much as the other guys. And then I feel like I don't buy they play different positions argument on the Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki thing because Mike Gesicki's he's a tight end.
And this is what you're going to diagram for us?
I really want to see. Are these actual Mike? I thought that was a Raiders snap.
No,
Are these Mike-
it is. There is a Raider snap. They're not Mike Gesicki ones, but there are.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can show you.
How are you gonna prove to me that Mike Gesicki's slot snaps are different if you're not going to show me Mike Gesicki's slot
I'm
snaps?
showing you snaps that were charted as slot snaps for tight ends. It doesn't matter.
But that aren't Mike Gesicki,
Yeah, there aren't Gesicki.
who famously only ran routes on 7% of his routes were from inline in that was 2021, but like literally doesn't play inline. 7%.
He doesn't, but I'll offline. These are the ones I have at hand. I didn't go pull these. I'll pull some that show what I'm talking about if you want that are specifically.
This is how we expand our fantasy analysis.
Yes,
right
this
here.
is the best millionaire glow up in the history of glow ups.
Yeah.
Wins
Comes in
to
all
really
22
become
film,
an
bro.
all-
Listen, think how irritated I must have been by this narrative to go watch all 22. Think about that.
I think you're wrong.
It's got
You're
to
gonna like. I'm excited for the convincing here.
I bullied you guys into Trey McBride, so you guys make this pick here for the luxury pick at the end.
Let's do Patterson before I destroy Ben's Gesicki argument.
I'm Team Hunter Henry.
let's go.
Oh, then give him Hunter Henry.
Chris Allen, break the
Chris,
tie.
Chris,
Who do you
Chris.
like? Or
We'll go with
We're
Hunter
gonna do
Henry. I like Hunter Henry
Okay.
here.
all right, let's do it.
The real tight end.
Let's go 3.
All right.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna recap this team real quick for the audio listeners, and then the audio listeners are gonna be fucked as Pat draws little squiggly lines on a screenshot
Sorry.
of all 22
All right,
films.
audio listeners, they will not translate.
It will not translate.
All right, our room here: Kenny Pickett, Kyler Murray, Desmond Ritter. All of them double stacked, and it just brings such joy to my heart. Running backs: Christian McCaffrey, Javonte Williams, Devon Achane, Jamal Williams, Roshan Johnson. Wide receivers: Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, Rondell Moore. Tight ends: Kyle Pitts, Trey McBride, and Hunter Henry. Very, very fun team there. Pat, I give you the floor.
Let's hear this. I need to hear this.
Oh, that's the wrong thing. Hang on. I want to show the other one first.
So wait, are you sure? What my question is, that purple one, are you sure that wasn't classified as inline?
Yes, I'm 100% sure.
Because I did a little bit of charting for PFF, but it was years ago, and I'm pretty sure they used to classify that as inline if they were that.
No,
close.
I literally went and looked. I
Okay.
looked at the
that specific
specific
play.
play
Got it.
chart, that specific play,
Got
the play chart, how it was charted. Then I looked at how the thing came out in terms of like who was where, and so I like triple checked that this is a true
Okay.
slot snap.
Okay.
Okay, so here's like what I think most people are thinking is going to happen with Gesicki and Hunter Henry. So this is Dallas Goedert in gray, and this is Zach Ertz. This is from 2021 in purple. Zach Ertz is lined up in what I would call a true slot, right? Like he's playing slot receiver. Dallas Goedert is lined up like a tight end. But the thing about Dallas Goedert here is that he was also
That's a
Sorry,
tight end. I think of both of them as true slots.
both of them are in this slot. In this
Yeah.
in this example, both are in the slot.
But
Okay.
one is in line? Wow, they
Well-
charted as
Well,
in
no.
one is closer, but both
Yeah.
are in the slot.
Okay.
All right, let me pull up the other one.
That's not how I think of the Henry Gesicki thing. I think that could happen on some formations, but
Mhm.
you said you thought that's how you think most people think of
Well,
it.
yeah,
Personally, that's not how I've been thinking of it.
Let me pull this one up and then tell me how you're thinking of. Sorry, this is like kind of more of a pain.
I love it. This stream started talking about PRW based on wind games, and now we're finishing with
Now we're charting.
definitions
Yes.
of inline tight
Yeah.
ends. I love it.
So
I'm getting
this
so close to my screen to see this.
This is Hunter Renfro here in
Yeah.
yellow. This is Darren Waller. Okay, you've got. I think this is Adams here. You've got another. Or no, Adams. That's
Adam.
That's yeah.
Yeah, this is probably Matt Collins or something. This was last year. So these are your traditional wide receivers. Wide receiver in the slot. Traditional wide
Yeah.
receiver playing the slot.
Can you turn paintbrush on and make some squigglies as you talk here?
So
Thank
if you look here at Darren Waller, he's clearly, kind of a tight end, but this was a slot snap for Darren Waller.
All right, can
He
you
is
show me the
standing
route?
up.
Can you give me the diagram for the route that he's running
Yeah.
to?
He's going to do. He's actually going to chip this guy and come out here, and I believe the route goes to here, and Carr hits him right over the middle there.
There we go.
Nice.
There's no is that even true? Or did you just fully make that?
No,
up?
I'm pretty sure it's true because I've actually watched the play.
That's great. Do you have
It's
any?
interesting because Waller actually chips a guy on this play. So it's a slot snap, but he does a tight end thing. Is a very
That's
tight
a rare one. Even if you look at his stance, it's even like half between the stand up that they do there, and he's almost like looking like an offensive tackle. He's got his hand kind of on his knee.
What it is that he's not on the line of scrimmage, and he's not down. So it's like that's considered a slot snap.
But that's what I'm saying. But Hunter Henry's gonna be down a lot. His inline rate was really high. Do you have any inline?
Well, my point is on this one is that this is a slot snap for Darren Waller. I don't see Foster Moreau anywhere. Slot snap doesn't mean always that you're going to get a 2 tight end thing and one's in the slot. It's that you can have a slot wide receiver here in Hunter Henry playing a very traditional slot role, and Darren Waller's also on the field with a slot snap, but he's not really doing anything different than what a tight end always does.
Yeah,
that happens a lot.
I'm not arguing that take at all. My argument would be that Mike Gesicki will play essentially a role similar to what Hunter Renfrow plays in that offense in the New England offense. He will play a wide receiver role. Like people have made that argument for Dalton Kincaid as well, that he's going to play a different position.
I'm not drafting any Dalton Kincaid because I don't.
So
I'm just
the argument
very
is
stuff like that.
And in Gesicki's position last year in his old stuff, he essentially did do that. He only lined up in the slot. So I guess I'm not. Like, he lined up like a wide receiver. He was like the Hunter Renfrow of that offense. He was basically their third receiver in 3 receiver sets. He's always stand up. He was never hand on the ground, hand in the dirt.
He was their starting tight end, though. He was their starting tight end.
Just in name. Like
no, like Durham Smythe didn't play as many snaps on passing downs as he would have if Mike.
But that's because they played Al Gingold a ton as a fullback. I mean, that's like one of the weird things about the Dolphins offense, where they kind of are running, what is it? It would be 20 personnel, 2 running backs, and 3 receivers is sort of what they probably should have been classifying it because Gesicki's more or less playing receiver. They're using a fullback as their tight end, like the Niners use juice.
They do weird stuff too. Like I was seeing stuff where they had Tyreek Hill motioning in the backfield and coming back around, and then Mike Gesicki was in the backfield and then would option out to the slot, and so they did a ton of weird stuff. But Durham Smythe played a lot less than he would have if Mike Gesicki wasn't there. Is basically
right. I think New England's offense is going to be different than that in that regard. But yeah, no, this was interesting. I guess my only real point would be that I don't think I'm arguing with your points, which are valid points. I just don't think I'm arguing with them necessarily.
I think it's possible what you're saying is true with him being the like a wide receiver essentially, but we've seen very few instances of that where you have essentially a team operating out of 12 personnel as their primary base personnel. That has happened. Like they did that with Aaron Hernandez, right?
Yeah.
I don't know
the
stats.
They did.
Sure that, yeah. So it's definitely possible. I'm just like, I've always been a bit skeptical of how good Mike Gesicki is as well. So I'm just like, it just feels like an outlier situation that I'm not really buying. But
the big difference with the Kincaid stuff is the price, right? Like the Gesicki is free around most drafts, and Kincaid you're paying a pretty big premium for that thesis. Chris, it was great having you come by, dropping bombs on ship chasing and drafting.
The chat was saying that me and Pat were arguing too much, not letting you talk too much.
We definitely were.
I missed the last 2 shows.
Had a 22% route rate last year. Okay, 22%. Right? Is that what you want?
We didn't do a July 4th show. I missed the 2 shows before. Me and Pat haven't done a show in a month. Like we needed to get this out. I'm sorry.
He was like, we weren't arguing, but to that point,
we definitely didn't give Chris enough time, and let me tell you why. Because you're wrong about Mike Gesicki.
It was a blast having you on.
God, man. Nah, man, this was awesome. And you guys ever want me back on again, just say the word. This was
for sure.
Yeah,
and you got the second part of the Does Wind Matter is dropping in the Fantasy Life newsletter tomorrow. Anything else that you're working on right now?
Trying to dig into, so focus on wind. Got that pretty much knocked out. I want to now start digging into the other elements, rain, snow, all of that, to see really what matters. And it's almost the same questions you have to ask about wind. Instead of just saying, well, is there going to be wind in the game? It's how much. So if it's going to be raining, how much? Back to the monsoon talk we had earlier. And the same thing for snow. People see or hear snow in the forecast. They think about, what was it? The Philly Detroit game from, when was that? 2013, 2014. And it was, I forget Cut on a Dime is his Twitter handle.
Yeah, LaShawn McCoy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, why couldn't I think of
Yes,
that?
I remember that game.
Yeah, long touchdown in overtime.
Yeah, but everybody remembers that stuff, or the Frank Gore game from the Bills Colts from, I forget, that was probably like 5 or 6 years ago, where they had to move snow out of the way for Indianapolis kicker that retired to kick a field goal. Vinatieri, to kick a field goal at the end. So it's like that stuff we remember, but it really does come down to how much and also where at that makes a difference than anything else.
I remember that there was a Jaguars rain game that was nuts. I think some running back had a really long run. I don't know. It's always stuck with me.
That was oh man, when was that too? That was fairly recent, if I'm remembering right, or maybe that was in the early 2000s. But yeah,
I do.
Just Jacksonville.
Chris, we should talk with Jordan and the crew at Fantasy Life, because I think an El Nino article would do great SEO within this hyper.
Oh, God, yeah.
Dude, it really would. I would 100% read the El Nino article.
Yeah.
All you need is El Nino and fantasy in the title, and you're definitely
and then everybody's gonna want to read it. Yeah.
It comes around once a decade or something?
Like 5 to 7 years or something like that. If I remember,
that sounds like
2 to 7, 2 to 7, which is like a wild range because every other year or every 7 years. Okay.
With the title El Nino is going to change everything for 2023 fantasy football. Yeah.
And it's just going to have that clip from Chris Farley and SNL. And that's pretty much the entirety of the piece.
Exactly.
Yep.
So make sure you guys are following Chris on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. For the audio listeners, we got it up here on the screen. I got it down in the description. Also, be sure to check out all of his great stuff over at Fantasy Life. We even have new author pages over there as well. So it's really easy to check out the Chris Allen page, and you can go and find all of the work he's been doing, both writing the newsletter and some of these more intensive research pieces and a lot of fun best ball stuff. I will say, Chris, when I initially saw this article come across best ball draft phases, because you were doing weather stuff, I saw phases and immediately went to moon phases. I thought you were doing something with that.
Should have had them do if we could do it, have the Marvel character Moon Knight and just put that on the thumbnail for the piece or something like that. See, that's a good idea. All right.
Baseball sun signs.
Yeah.
There it is.
I love it.
We need it all. All right. Appreciate the chat tonight. You guys were on fire as well. Gretch, I did see JGFC wants you to put an alert in the Discord when you're drafting on the bachelor party weekend this weekend.
Oh, God.
I will try to remember to do that if I'm doing lives. I don't know how the whole weekend's going to go. I know I'm doing some golfing. I know I'm going to do some drinking. But, yeah, I mean,
that's why he wants to know when you're hopping in draft.
Yeah, plus EV.
Yeah.
Pat, what do you got going on?
Well, I want to tell people I'm going to be doing a long stream. My plan is to do 7 drafts with 18 guests on July 18th, which is next Tuesday. So still organizing that. I've given myself a little bit of a project management task, but I'm working on getting that together.
Do you want to tell people why that day?
Yeah. Why does that day matter?
Yeah.
It just seemed like a cool thing to do. That's the date that I drafted my winning BBM 3 team. So
there you go.
Bringing some friends on.
Are you nervous? I guess on here maybe one time or two when I filled in, you guys drafted. Are you nervous about being a hosting drafting bro?
No, I mean when you're nervous, it's because you're worried that what's going to happen isn't going to live up to your expectations of what's going to happen. And I know this is going to be a shit show. So why would I be nervous?
Well, I just want you to know there's going to come a point during the draft. You're going to have a guy you want to take, and your co-hosts are going to be screaming that they'd rather take a luxury pick at the time. And you're going to want them to actually just vocalize who that
Matt will just take his pick.
I'll just take what I want. My scream. I'm on
Pat
the
just
stick.
takes his pick.
And shout out to King Cap too, who also drafted his winning team on 7-18, the regular
very
season.
nice.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is going to be a best ball holiday over there. And for me, tomorrow night, Jake Trowbridge from Fantasy Life is joining me for the randomizer. Jake's very funny, does a ton of impressions and characters. So we're going to have a good time over there tomorrow night. I think that is it for the plugs. If you guys want to become a YouTube member, you can hop in the Discord. Always a fun time there in the Ship Chasing Discord. Hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks again to Chris. We'll see you guys next time.